persuasive UIL speeches. And the topic is, under President Jair Bolsonaro, is Brazil's healthcare system failing? So if you want to take like notes or anything, you can write that down. I don't know. I can repeat it. It's under President Jair Bolsonaro, is Brazil's healthcare system failing? Yeah. Right. Brazil's healthcare system is a lot like a tin of canned soup, short on substance and barely able to hold up a family. As the Yale Global Health Review reports on December 3rd of last year, Brazil's healthcare system is the largest universal healthcare system in the world. Yet it seems that large systems have translated to large problems as well. As Al Jazeera reports on September 3rd of this year, for the past couple of years, Brazil has seen large protests because of the inefficiencies and deficiencies inside of its current healthcare system. In fact, only 2 months ago, one of the country's largest protests, with over 20,000 protesters rallying outside of one hospital, with one poster reading that all I need is a respirator, and you can't give it to me. However, Brazil recently elected their new president, Jair Bolsonaro, who has promised reform towards Brazil's healthcare system, and thus many Brazilians are hopeful that change is on the horizon, considering that Brazil's healthcare system is responsible for the lives of over 300 million people. But it's also a model for the rest of the world to follow. It's imperative to ask, under President Jair Bolsonaro, is Brazil's healthcare system still failing? And the answer, unfortunately, is absolutely, because Bolsonaro is only perpetuating existing problems. More evident in first, corruption. Second, economic turmoil. And finally, a lack of medical professionals. Corruption is a lot like a snowball, in the sense that once it's set in motion, it tends to only get larger and larger. Unfortunately for Brazilians, the first reason that their healthcare system is still failing is because of corruption. As the International Crisis Group reports on December 7th of last year, Brazil is one of the most corrupt nations in Latin America. And trust me, when your neighbors are countries such as Venezuela, that's a title you have to work to earn. Unfortunately, it seems that Brazil has been working a little too hard. As Forbes explains, on October 7th of last year, back in 2015, Brazil lost over $40 billion towards corruption in just its healthcare system alone. And this problem has only increased under Bolsonaro, with over half of the money allocated to public hospitals being lost in the administrative process, not even going towards the resources of these hospitals that they're supposed to be going to in the first place. But more problematically is that Bolsonaro's solution to this problem has been to reduce the amount of funds going towards these hospitals. This hasn't eradicated corruption, rather it's made it even harder for these hospitals to function because now they have even less money to allocate towards resources and the medical professionals that are supposed to be helping the Brazilian public. In short, corruption may be a snowball, but right now, because Bolsonaro is doing nothing about it, it's melting the future for all of Brazil. It's obvious to me that our president, Donald Trump, believes in the power of creating jobs. After all, the White House always seems to be hiring. Yet it seems that Bolsonaro hasn't followed in his footsteps, because the second reason that Brazil's healthcare system is still failing is because of ongoing economic turmoil. As BBC explains on September 8th of this year, Brazil's economy has been trending downwards ever since it contracted by nearly 7% between the years of 2015 and 2016. And although its slow growth has been because of an increase on government spending on programs such as retirement that have yielded no economic benefits, Bolsonaro has actually made this problem worse because he's blamed other countries. As Foreign Policy magazine continues in September of this year, Bolsonaro has cut down on free trade because of his isolationist mindset, withdrawing from free trade associations such as Mercosur, a Latin American trade bloc. But this has only stifled Brazilian companies because now they have no longer the international markets they once had. The World Bank assesses back in 2015 that there is a direct relationship between economics and a healthcare system, because as an economy gets worse, on average, people have less money to spend on higher quality food and medicine, meaning that you have more sick people and thus more people going towards Brazilian hospitals, overrunning a system that can't keep up anyway. In short, Bolsonaro preaches an isolationist dream, but right now, it's only creating a nightmare for his people. To run a hospital, you need doctors. Bolsonaro hasn't figured that out, which is why the third reason that Brazil's healthcare system is still failing is because of a lack of medical professionals. The World Health Organization explains in August of this year that Brazil only has 1.7 doctors for every 1,000 inhabitants. That's the lowest of any universal healthcare system in the world. That's why The Guardian continues in August of this year that a lot of this is attributed to the lack of education within Brazil for medical professionals, as well as the high crime and low standard of living rates that have pushed many doctors outside of the country. Bolsonaro's solution has been to promote homegrown doctors, but the way he's done this is by targeting foreign doctors within Brazil. As the New York Times explains on September 4th of this year, Bolsonaro has emitted anti-immigrant and anti-foreign doctor rhetoric repeatedly. As a result, only 2 weeks ago, Cuba withdrew 8,300 of the doctors within Brazil, meaning that now they're faced with an even larger deficiency. The same article continues that in towns such as El Cuaco, where citizens of a 70,000 town only have about 18 doctors that just lost over half of them, it seems that these citizens keep getting turned down at their local hospitals simply because the hospitals don't have enough doctors to keep up. In short, it's because Bolsonaro, instead of promoting medical professionalism, is rather driving out foreign doctors that are trying to help his country. He's only making the scenario worse. In retrospect, with the future of an entire nation on the line, we've asked ourselves today's question. Under President Jair Bolsonaro, is Brazil's healthcare system still failing? And the answer, unfortunately, is absolutely. He's perpetuating existing problems. First, corruption. Second, economic turmoil. And finally, the lack of medical professionals in Brazil. It's time President Bolsonaro reform his attempt at his healthcare system and actually fulfill his promise to the Brazilian people. Because if Brazil keeps heading in this direction, then a can of tin soup might be the best thing Brazilian hospitals have to offer.